2. All right, hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, so I'm really excited to hear our guest speaker, as well as folks who are calling us live, because we do want to hear from you. If you've joined a chat where I've moderated before, you really know that I value your participation. Lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you're deciding to be with us for the hour, whether you're here live or whether you are rewatching this later on your own time. So please participate. You can participate in a number of ways. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. This is a safe digital space. I really pride myself in holding safe digital spaces. I'm not afraid to kick people out if you're being disrespectful, because I really want everyone's voices to be heard here. So turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so, or you can use the chat box. I recommend writing any questions, any suggestions, any tips and tricks of your own, any dreams that you've had last night. You can write anything you'd like in the chat box, and I will raise that to our guest speaker, and so everyone can kind of reflect with you there. So be sure to make use of the chat box. Also, I should mention, if you hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately and I will flag your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and keep you anonymous. All right, so the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on social medias and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And if this is your first time joining a chat where I'm moderating, I will just take a couple seconds to introduce myself before I pass the mic to our guest speaker. So thank you for joining us today. I really love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence. So at home and in the workplace, so I might reflect to that note on anything here that we talk about today. So if anyone is interested in philosophizing on how we can practice or deepen our emotional intelligence, feel free to chime in there. I'm always looking for new ideas. Otherwise, I invite you to support the project that I'm working on. That is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, or you can just connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect there as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Madeline Shaw. Let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, Mariella, and many thanks for inviting me, and for all of you who are tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from, for taking the time today. I know that life is busy and complicated in this era of COVID and climate change and all the things, and I hope to share some encouraging and inspiring stories and tips with you. So my name is Madeline. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a cisgendered white settler Canadian woman, and I am a serial social entrepreneur. I've been growing, and I should add, I love growing things. It's my favorite thing. I'm a really heavy duty gardener, indoor, outdoor, but I love growing relationships, ideas, enterprises. I've founded 4 now for-profit and nonprofit ventures in the last 30 years, all of which have social change at their heart. So yeah, just really happy now. I've just published my first book called The Greater Good, Social Entrepreneurship for Everyday People Who Want to Change the World, based on my experience and also the experience of literally over 100 of my peers. So it isn't just about me. In my 3 decades of experience, I've come across many other social entrepreneurs and decided to take my experience and their wisdom and just kind of the best, freshest thinking on the topic and roll it all together into a bit of a how-to manual that's also a bit of a manifesto of encouragement. So I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Amazing. I love a good manifesto, and I'm really excited to get my hands on that book. I'm totally in that world right now. So I need some more. Like I said, I don't have enough pages, all of the new things I'm learning, all the new insight that I'm getting. So I love that you're also valuing your work based on other folks' story and just creating more stories to share. So thank you so much in advance. Can you help us set up the stage here for today's conversation? Just let us know some of the principal themes for today.
Yeah, so The book is sort of unique in that, it's interesting, Mariella, that you mentioned emotional intelligence right out of the gate. And I don't think, that's kind of no accident in this case. Like, to me, this isn't just a sort of step-by-step how to formulaic kind of guide in terms of becoming a social entrepreneur. It really is about understanding and tapping and drawing from that really deeply intuitive, emotionally intelligent place, not just to locate what you want to bring into the world, your vision, but also to attract support as you build your vision. And so, yeah, and also so my experience crosses both the nonprofit and the for-profit worlds, which I feel is a bit of an arbitrary, unhelpful binary distinction. And it really needs to start with the type of change you want to create in the world, not necessarily how you want to do that. But I'm a big advocate, that said, for-profit enterprises having the ability to create positive social change. I think there's a bit of a bad reputation there around business and capitalism that isn't entirely unearned, but can also be unlearned. So, and finally, yeah, so the everyday people that I refer to in the title of the book basically means, it's kind of code, honestly, for anybody who's not a cis het white male pitching apps in Silicon Valley. The rest of us.
Most of us, yes. Thank you so much. I love that we're just jumping right out of the gate with, getting real, essentially, getting to the roots. I'm very much, I feel so empowered knowing that we can think this way and actually be having these conversations, to now. I think that maybe 10 years ago, or even a couple of years ago, this conversation wasn't really happening, at least maybe, in the open air. Maybe it was happening under this, behind the scenes in small groups. And I think that I'm reading this book now that is called, I have the virtual background on, but I don't know if you can see it. There it is. It's called Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of his. He's a wonderful thinker. He's someone who's definitely influenced my work.
I mean, and you said unlearning, and just I'm jumping ahead of myself right now just because your introduction just has me really excited. So thank you for setting the stage. I'm gonna try to bite my tongue so that I can keep the mic on you and not just kind of dive in deep with my own personal questions, because we've got folks who submitted a bunch of questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just pull up a list of beautiful questions that you all have submitted. Now, if you hear your question come up, let us know that you're here live with us, so we can make sure that your question gets answered. And also, if you have anything else you'd like to add, we'd love to hear from you. If you don't hear your question come up and something comes to mind in the moment, feel free to add that to the chat box or just hop off mute. I just ask that we be respectful and have one person off of mute at a time. All right, so let's roll into these questions. How do I evaluate if I have the passion and stamina to take an idea forward?
Okay, well, I would say those are two very different things. And sometimes our passion can realistically outstrip our stamina. I'm a big advocate for keeping things small. Honestly, like baby steps. Like, I think we're living in a world where the idea of entrepreneurship is perceived as this like 24/7 and, disruptive and exhausting. Like, hustle culture is very present with us, and it's especially present in the entrepreneurial world. So there can be this kind of idea that if I'm going to undertake an entrepreneurial idea or a project, then I'm going to have to bust my ass and I'm going to have to, whatever, just work, your fingers to the bone. And which I really dispute, because I think that idea puts a lot of, everyday people who have lives, who perhaps are parents, who have full-time jobs, who are supporting elders, who are doing all the things in our lives, to just this perception that you just need to drop everything and go off on, and create this, blockbuster idea and sacrifice the rest of your life, is a really unhelpful construct. So I would invite people, for starters, just to kind of let go of that idea. Like, what you are looking for is probably looking for you. There are some really, really simple ways that you can start. And that is the main thing that I would advocate. Like, we are never going to know everything that we need to know in advance. We are never going to be able to see the rest of the road as it's going to unfold. We are not going to be able to effectively plan. We're not going to be able to do any of those things. which can be incredibly daunting. And yes, becoming an entrepreneur is and can be a super demanding thing, but it can also be something that starts in a very humble, simple way that is as simple as telling people what you're thinking about, writing down ideas. Like, you don't necessarily need to come out of the gate with a full-blown business plan and da-da-da. You don't have to do any of those things. So I would advocate for integrating it into your life in a sort of a gradual way. That does not assume that you're going to get radically burnt out and all of these things. And that if you do so, then you're more easily able to integrate it into your family life, into your, making room for self-care, all of the other things. Like, if what you do as a social entrepreneur, essentially, if what you create fries you, then we're no further ahead. Like, it's a bit of a contradiction in terms, if you know what I mean, because in this case, we're trying to make the world a better place. You are part of the world, and therefore, whatever it is that you're creating, it cannot take you down in the process.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And I love that because it's taking a completely different perspective, and it's not a polarized perspective. It's not a yes, no, black, white, I should do this way instead of it the other way. It's more of a dynamic perspective that considers so much more, and that hopefully will allow more, like you said, integration is a key word, and without the burnout. Otherwise, like you said, we're playing the same game, that we're just playing the same game with different shoes. So I really love that you called that out and also highlighted to not, to make sure that you don't get into burnout, because that is essentially a part of that same system. I'm having some beautiful conversations recently. I interviewed a gentleman called Sunjata, who studied systems, and he said that it changed his life. And so I'm just coming back to that often, especially thinking about emotional intelligence and how that really hasn't been, a main component in our system of how we learn in school and education, and how we create work, how we think about work, how we think about how we can contribute to society. So we have this system that actually maybe asks us to be perfect, right? And so it hinders us from jumping out. We're not going to jump out of the gate because I don't have it all ready yet. I don't have everything. I don't have all the answers. And this idea of this system that creates perfectionism, we think we need all the answers before we even speak about the idea. And you said that so beautifully. And I hope that people find that encouraging to just, speaking is powerful in and of itself. And I think that it's something that can open up opportunity. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Joan writes in the chat box here, I want to eventually move to entrepreneurship. I thought or was thinking I started by creating a Facebook group. Takes time to build and unsure what steps to take. Thank you, Joan, for writing that. Madeline, do you want to comment on Joan's response there, or her reflection?
Yeah, and I guess I'd love a little bit of clarification about the question about whether that has been a disappointing experience or something that has been helpful. And the question is, what steps to take next? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Awesome. Joan, you can feel free to hop off mute, or you can drop in the chat box and I'll raise that to Madeline's awareness. All right. Maybe you're going to drop that in the chat box. So we'll hold on to that until she gives us some more background, but it's good. Madeline wants more information before she gives her response. So go ahead and drop that in the chat box. All right, until then, let's move on to this next question here. What advice do you have for someone pitching a social change health app?
Okay, so yeah, let's break that down a little bit. So this notion of pitching is an interesting one. And I think the way it's constructed in our popular imagination is that you're pitching, it's kind of an adversarial kind of, anybody who's watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or, that kind of construct where, the wily entrepreneur's got to convince the savvy investor, and there's this kind of push-pull sort of thing where it's all about being super tight and having the right answers and having a sharp slide deck and really, a tight story and that type of thing, and this kind of bulletproof sort of exterior. And that's how we think about it. And that it happens really quickly is the other thing too. And in my experience, and I discuss this at length in the book, the activity of like a true investor pitch like that in that situation will almost never happen to you. Okay, most enterprises never get in front of venture capitalists. And also there's a whole bunch of stuff that leads up to that. So, but what you are doing all the time is telling your story. You are sharing the story and your vision constantly with people. And that I would absolutely put under the umbrella of pitching. But I would invite people, instead of having this kind of like energy of, I need to convince you of something, I'm right, and I got to tell you about it and get you to do something. And that's the energy of it. What I like to cultivate instead are things like emotion and trust. Like ultimately you're building a relationship with someone, right? And this person is not just necessarily a customer, someone who's going to give you money. Maybe this person is a future business partner. Maybe there's someone who can bring some other form of help or value to what it is that you're trying to create. Because I will tell you this right out of the gate, whatever it is that you're trying to create is certainly not going to be possible all by yourself. You're going to need help, right? So you're going to need these relationships. So every time that you have the opportunity to share your vision or tell your story is an opportunity to do that. And the most potent way, and this again, it speaks to what you're saying so strongly, is around emotion, emotional intelligence. People want to feel something. And it is the best way to connect with someone. Like you will absolutely, it develops trust, which is actually something that makes us really happy as human beings. It invites other people to bring their ideas into what you are proposing. It's not just about, this is my vision and you are listening. It's like, what can you bring into this? Like people need to be excited. They need to find themselves in what you're talking about. And once that happens, I can tell you everything happens. Like people, they will come forward with all manner of help. And it becomes this really exciting, beautiful interaction that truly is a conversation. It's not just I pitch, you catch, it's let's talk. And so that is something, and with respect to apps, and like to me, it doesn't even matter whether it's a tech-based solution or not, it could be anything. And but that said, I don't have a ton of experience with apps in particular. I just know they're extremely popular right now. But really just bear in mind this idea of cultivating relationship, trust, and emotion. And that, my friends, is about storytelling. Okay, it's not about statistics. It's not about convincing somebody of how bad something is. This is the problem, I have the solution. Like this kind of energy, again, that forms the common, like if you Google pitch deck templates or whatever, you'll get this problem, solution, problem, solution. Okay, I like to reframe that as a story. And typically whatever it is that you're pursuing is going to have some kind of a personal root. It's going to be something that matters to you for a very specific reason. And it's not an abstract, I saw a gap in the market. It's like, we are social entrepreneurs here. We're doing something because we're trying to make the world a better place in some way. So tell that story. And that's how you pitch, my friends.
Yes, yes, yes. People over profit, essentially, and like living things over profit. And how can we change the way that we actually value things? I think that storytelling is key in that, so that we can start to invest our ideas and our energy and our time in other things. I love reading works from Yuval Noah Harari or listening to his conversations and live Q&As, because his beautiful perspective as a historian who's from Israel is that, well, one, it's different from the education that I grew up having in public schools in the States, that is very like the A side of history. It doesn't really show you alternatives. The winners, as they say, write the history books. And so he is a historian who, he says, across the board, the one thing we're great at as Homo sapiens, the one that we do really great is creating fiction. We create stories. And so we're living in this world where we're living in, various fictions, various stories that have been told that we believe in, that we invest in, whether it be the fiction of a nation or a religion or a corporation. And we invest, we trust, we give them what we value. In this case, it's the almighty dollar. And we're giving them the power to continue to do whatever they want, essentially. So it's like, if we want to change, we have to open that up a little bit and try to not be in the mindset of I have to make this person, like, throw something at this person and pitch this so that they can let me know that I'm valuable, my story is valuable. We can go really deep there, but I just totally echo what you're saying as far as storytelling being the key to changing up the way that we, one, create business, and then also ask for people to support our business. Because otherwise, again, we're playing the same game where you're saying, you know, mostly cisgendered white-bodied males are, you know, the ones who are all at the table. And they're also the ones who are investing in the people who are in this table. So it's like, we need to change some of that dynamic so that, I don't know, I personally know people who are not white body cisgendered males who have apps, and they have a very hard time, and their intuition tells them it's because they are not a part of that identified, you know, person. And so, you know, we're trying to fit ourselves into the way that apps are made, let's say, or businesses are created in this pitching, this Hollywood, very, you know, I need you to validate me with money, instead of the essence of the story. And then we're just in this loop. I'm ranting on this now, but I totally agree with you about storytelling.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mariella. And yeah, I would also add, though, that there are some incredible new investors coming into the space who are incredibly diverse. And I'm thinking of Arlen Hamilton and Backstage Capital. And I would highly encourage anybody who's on this call to read her book called It's About Damn Time. And anyways, if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's okay. She's a Black woman. She's American. She is a self-taught venture capitalist who is using her now growing fund called Backstage Capital to fund ventures that have been founded by Black, brown, queer, non-binary folks. And she's, I don't even know how many millions of dollars she's raised now, but it's got a lot of zeros in there, and she's an incredible leader. So, and it's all working in the impact space. So she is looking to support folks, equity-seeking groups, members of equity-seeking groups, in doing really progressive things in, you know, using the tools of business to create positive, inclusive social change.
Beautiful. Yes, we need more folks like her.
Yes, we do.
Great. Thank you for calling that out. What is the website, or where can you find her work?
I believe it's backstagecapital.com.
Beautiful.
Or
Thank you.
Arlan Hamilton. Yeah.
Great. Great. All right. So Terry dropped a question here in the chat box. I'm in career transition and would like to work in a meaningful field. I spent 30 years in manufacturing, HR, and accounting, but would like to feel I am part of something that makes a difference. What suggestions do you have for finding remote work with a meaningful company or industry?
Cool. This is a wonderful question, and thanks so much, Terry. So for a big topic of the book, I had, you know, in the past I spoke about individual relationships and conversation, and now I'd like to broaden that out a little bit to communities. So there are some extraordinary communities online and obviously back in the real world to where, and what I am talking about, yes, it is networking, quote unquote, but it is with people who share your values, share your desire to find, you know, deeper meaning in the work that they're doing, to be more impactful in what they're creating, to use their skills in a new way that serves humanity or the planet. And so my top picks for that are Zebras Unite, is an incredible community, and that's at zebrasunite.coop. The Social Venture Network is another one. People can Google all these. I'm sure there'll be show notes that you can put them in. If you are a female identified individual or non-binary, you can check out sheo.world. And there are countless. They're in the resources section, actually, on my website is the best place to look. So that's madelineshah.ca/resources. And there are, oh my goodness, like if you're a member of any form of equity seeking group, whether it's like youth, elders, Black and brown founders, queer, LGBTQIA+ folks, there are groups for you to seek, who are seeking to, you know, become entrepreneurs, connect with social impact projects and businesses and nonprofits. it's really exciting. Like there's never been a better time to do this. But the thing is, it's to connect. It's just to have conversations with people, because that is where your ideas will really start to take shape. To me, there's something so potent and valuable and important when you share your idea, even with one other person. It's incredible what can happen. And I can speak to this from real life experience where, I share an idea, somebody hears about it, somebody offers to help, I did this with an event series for girls that I ran for several years, and that I sort of started musing about the idea as part of a public speaking gig. I met a woman who attended it 2 weeks later. She was, and like, I love that idea. I'm an event planner, let me help. I said, okay. And then, ended up telling somebody else about it who offered to fund it. Like, it just went on and on and on. And I ended up producing events across Canada for 7 years. Thanks to that. So don't underestimate these really, really small gestures of connection that you can make, and seek out community. And in a way, that's the blessing of these times where we are all Zooming away and we're interneting away, is that you can reach literally around the world to find folks who are curious about the things that you're curious about. The space of career transition is another incredibly rich field. Like, there are people going, okay, wow, I put all this time in, what next? And there are groups about, meetup groups. Like, it's a Google search away to find people that that you can have these conversations with and help build whatever it is that's next, or get insight from them. And in addition to that, I would suggest doing some inner work as well. So one of the exercises I discuss in the book is an inner child meditation. So my belief is that we think that we know who we are and what we want to do, but a lot of us at some point in life turn around and we're like, wait, this isn't it. This can't be all of it. I don't feel, there's this moment of kind of self-reckoning. And I feel like a really good place to start in terms of accessing ideas for what's next, or for that I guess, bucket list sort of feeling, like, what am I here for? What is my purpose? Is to actually spend some time and go back and revisit your inner youth, your inner child. Like, who was that person? What were they fascinated by? What scared them? What did they care about? And kind of just looking there, because so often, the ideas that we had when we were kids that we might have dismissed, when we became teenagers, it just wasn't cool anymore, or, maybe somebody ridiculed you or criticized you for thinking that, or being interested in that, or whatever. It's actually a really important clue in terms of what is still inside you that still wants to come out, to be expressed and actualized. So I would spend time, spend time on the internet and talk to people, but first step back and go inside and see what comes up. Oh, it looks like, you're welcome. It looks like Mariella is frozen for a second here. So I'm actually going to move back to Joan's question, because I'd like to give that one another shake. So Joan, I would love to hear a little bit more, if you have a second, about about your idea. But generally speaking, I would even take it a step back from Facebook and space. And hi, Terry. Is everything okay? Did we just, apparently it's very windy where Mary, she's down in South America. Yeah, Joan, I'd love to hear a little bit more, because I would like to help you.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm unmuted.
Yeah, hey.
Okay, so hi. So I had been, up until about maybe June, I've been really trying to pivot into HR, and it's been really tough. I've worked with career coaches, and I have a robust LinkedIn profile and a lot of networking. When I say networking, I'm talking about the right kind of networking, not begging or anything, but just putting myself out there more. I've been on this platform twice. And so in June of this year, I decided, because career coaching for women is really my passion, that I was sort of going to go all in with that. Right now, I'm working a non-related job. I'm a federal government contractor. Been in that for about 13 months. And I launched a Facebook group for mid-career professional women in late August of this year. And then I did a business page just to sort of keep myself motivated. So that's where I'm in now, but I'm not sure if I'm, trying to balance this with full-time work, if I'm sort of doing the right thing, or should I be doing other things to sort of, I guess grow, but also not, what's the word I want to use? Um, I don't have any clients, which I'm fine with. I'm perfectly fine with, but I just want to make sure I'm kind of doing the right things or things to sort of get myself to where I would get clients, without being pushy or salesy. That's just not my type. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it totally does. And I would just start off by congratulating you for having the courage to even take it this far. Like that's amazing. You've got a solid job going, and I'm sure a lot of other commitments in your life. So I would say, in terms of next step, what's coming to me is to try and create maybe an online event with the folks who have already joined your Facebook group, and have a bit of a brainstorming with them. What do they need? What would benefit them? Where are they at? And try and get a little bit more specific from them, because it feels like this is a kind of service where, you may think that they need a certain thing, but once you discuss with your users what services that you could provide or information you could share or whatever, something may come that you weren't necessarily aware of. I think sometimes we can be just a little bit, well, this was true for me, so it must be true for these people. And I'm not saying that you're doing that, but there's more. If you already are attracting a group of people to your Facebook page, I would engage with them more deeply. And finally, I don't think there are any mistakes. I don't think you're doing the wrong thing at all. I don't think you're missing anything. Like, none of this is actually easy. I think a lot of people sometimes think there's sort of a magic formula. And if I just do this, and I get this many followers, or I get this loan, or I raise this amount of money, or whatever the thing is, then everything is going to kind of fall into place and be easy. It's not. This is a practice. And so, so that would be my tip right off the hop, is to let yourself off the hook in terms of this idea of possibly not doing the right thing. You're doing great. And getting out of bed in the morning these days is doing great, as far as I'm concerned. Thing number one. And then thing number two, connect more deeply with the people who are already paying attention to you. Thank you for that wonderful question.
Okay, one last thing I meant to forget. I have about 11 people in the group, which is fine, and almost all of them are people that I like, maybe 2 or 3 former coworkers, and then current coaches that I met over the last year that joined to sort of support me. So and not, again, I'm not salesy, but I'm going to still follow your suggestion. But the other coaches, maybe 8 or 9 of them, already have sort of their own practice. They joined to support me. So that's really the membership base right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, never underestimate it only really takes one person, with the right suggestion or opportunity. Like, you never know. And I think, again, we're living in a culture where it's like, oh, everything needs to be scalable, and it needs to be big, and it needs to make everybody happy. And I've got to, capture a certain, huge percentage of a market or whatever. Really often all it takes to move the dial, Joan, on ideas is one conversation with one person, or even a conversation with yourself, and to move something forward, to get insight. And so, don't be afraid to look with the people. They're coming to you for reasons that that you may not even fully understand. Just because they're also coaches and so on, doesn't necessarily mean that maybe you all can't do something together. There could be some form of innovation of creating a group. I don't know, but it just seems like, since they've already said yes to you, to take that a little bit deeper makes sense to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joan, for hopping off mute there. Can you all hear me all right? I got kicked out there for a moment. Great. It's a windy day here, so I feel like the internet is holding on. Let's continue. We've got about 30 more minutes, and I'm learning a lot. So thank you all for submitting your questions. And Joan, good luck to you there. Actually, this is a great follow-up question for to continue after Joan's comment. So this question was submitted previous. How can you stay on track and keep at it, especially after hitting a brick wall?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about brick walls for a sec. Like, what is a brick wall? it's a challenge, I guess, right? But it sounds like boom, like it's this thing that's just hit you, and it's like, oh, it's got this really energy of like something really terrible. And those things do happen, like for sure. Everything happens. It's like entrepreneurship is kind of no different from life that way. It's like the good things, the bad things, the I'm not so sure things, the wow, that was incredible, and I didn't even think it would happen. And like all of that is going to be true. So to me, a brick wall or whatever challenge it is, doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to punch on through, or you've got to, whatever, like it's an interesting metaphor, right? Like I think we've got, I mentioned hustle culture earlier, this idea that, of the push and the hustle and the 24/7 and all these things. I would sort of pause, take a look at the brick wall, go, okay, what's it made of? What is it telling me? What am I learning from this? Like, it's a form of feedback, right? When someone says no, or something says no, do you push back? Sometimes, yes. Other times, do you go, I'm going to go around it. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to, whatever. I mean, there's so many different things. I think that what the question underneath here is, how do you maintain your energy in the face of challenge, right? Because as I said, there will be challenge, and this work can be exhausting and so on. And that's why I really encourage people in the book to really get very grounded in their vision and their values and what motivates them. So it's going to be that keeps you getting up out of bed every morning to do what you're doing. It's a feeling, it's a form of social change that you want to create. It's a better world that matters to you, that is something that is connected to who you are extremely deeply. So it's about it reflects your values. So this is something that not anybody can do the thing that you want to do. It is your vision. It is, and that's related to your skills and who you are in the world. And so to always go back to that as a source of energy, and also be mindful. It's like, yes, we are in hustle culture, and maybe you need a rest. Maybe the brick wall is kind of doing you a favor and just going, take a break, sleep in, take a day off, like being in that liminal space of just the dream work and the imagination and that creative space. I think and the intuitive space, it's completely discounted in hustle culture. Like if you're not being productive, then you're not doing anything. And it's like, that is so wrong. If you are taking care of yourself, if you're taking care of your family, if you're doing something creative that liberates your mind from, and helps you make space for what the next step needs to be, like trust in that. And we don't always have to be doing something. We don't always have to be productive. And I really challenge that kind of attitude. And I know that sometimes we do need to work extremely hard, but especially I would say for folks with uteruses who are having cycles, who are having, like, that's a really big kind of cue for like, okay, I got to slow down for a few days here, or I'm feeling super creative right now and I just gotta, do stuff, and which is awesome. And as human beings, we all have this seasonally, right? So what season is it where you are living right now? For me, we're heading into winter. I'm feeling tired and I want to hibernate for a little bit. So do that. Like, don't try and override those things. They actually matter. It can really work in your favor. Even though it may seem counterintuitive. And I understand that, like, culturally, we are very solidly indoctrinated to push and to hustle and to do all this stuff all the time. And again, I think sometimes when you can just take a break, step back, make a little bit of space for yourself, be kind, some of your best ideas and the clarity that you need to know, okay, here's what I'm going to do with this wall will come to you.
Absolutely. I think they're called the NAP Ministry. Have you heard of them?
Yes, yes, I love the NAP Ministry. Yes, yes.
Going against the hustle culture, of course, and this idea of what productivity means. I'm a big believer that language is a very useful tool, and it can, it's a system within itself, right? So the way that we use language, like you said, this expression of hitting a brick wall, it's such a, and I need my bullet points to show my, ideas, bullet points, brick wall. It's very like aggressive, and it makes you want to this idea, it supports the idea of productivity is like going, going, going. And then you end up not feeding yourself and not respecting, again, like you said, your values, which hopefully are to make sure that you're well so that other people can be well as well in whatever you do. And so I really like this idea of, instead of like being like recognizing the power of language, and then maybe even taking these, you know, cultural expressions like hitting a brick wall and saying, well, maybe I'm at a crossroads instead. Maybe this is asking me to stop and say, well, maybe do I need to rest? Do I need to change it up? Do I need more time to be creative? And instead of thinking you're defeated and that keeps your inertia, you're at a resting point and you can make, you know, that opens up more options. I think this is actually a good segue into this next question that was submitted previous to the conversation. Just a little bit about you. What helped you to decide to start a business versus pursuing a CEO job? Do you remember being at that crossroads?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question, because I'd say it was never really an either or thing, and that's sort of a dominant theme in my life of like, if somebody's like A or B, I'm like, what about Z, or you know, whatever, and that's sort of how it is. So it was not an either or. In fact, I never. Sometimes we learn from the things that we don't want. Like for me, the idea of being a CEO does not feel comfortable to me at all. And but even in my own leadership, like for example, the company that I'm a co-founder of, Isle, which is where I'm at the office right now. Well, guess who's the CEO? Is it me? No, it's my business partner, which feels great because it's not who I am. I'm a leader, but I don't need to be the boss. It's and it's an interesting but subtle form of clarity around that. It's like, I like to have my own, I'm an instigator. I'm someone who starts things. I get things going, but I don't have the skill to actually fully manage them all the time, especially when they get bigger. And again, this goes back to the power of relationship and also understanding yourself. Like, again, the construct is, if you're a founder, you need to be the leader. And it's like, why? I don't know. We don't. Well, we just think that way. It doesn't actually necessarily make sense. Like, it's not, my skills are not operational. They are not administrative. They're nothing like that. They're visionary. And visionaries are not actually good people to run companies. They're good people to start them. And then they're good people to pull people in with stories and build relationship and do all those good things. So for me, it kind of chose me, honestly. Like, I could just never, I grew up in the 1980s. I was in high school and university. In those days, the idea of a CEO was Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. Like, it was this really like corrupt, nasty, like he was like president business, you know, in Lego. Like, that's the kind of figure he was, of like profit at all cost and, you know, maximizing shareholder value and ripping people off and all this stuff. And that was celebrated. Like, that was sort of the, you know, more money is better, right? But fortunately, there was also Anita Roddick, who was the founder of the Body Shop, who was the first woman sort of founder of a socially impact driven business that I was ever exposed to in my life. And thank goodness for her, because it showed me that, you know, you can be in business, but you can also be a really good person and use, kind of co-opt the tools of business to create positive social change and raise awareness and educate people and make a difference. And I found that incredibly exciting. And so it was almost like going, yeah, no, I don't want to be this exact thing, but I want to be my own version of it that is driven by my values and also by what I feel I'm best at in the world. And which is that visionary place. And it took me a long time to kind of get around to that. I think there's a mistaken belief that entrepreneurs need to be able to be good at everything. You know, you got to be coding your website and doing your financials and, oh my God, and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, guess what? Most human beings aren't that, you know. For the most part, we're good at a handful of things, and maybe one or two we're brilliant at. And the more that you can design your life and your career to support, instead of going, oh my goodness, I'm not good at all these other things, I got to figure it out. It's like, forget the other things, focus on the things that you're good at, and go with that, and then find other people by telling them great stories and touching their hearts to help you do the things that you are not so great at.
Beautiful. I'm going to throw in a bonus question here, just because I feel like you're on the track there. If you could go back in time and give your inner child of that time, so before you started your career, let's say,
Yeah.
What advice would you give that inner child?
Oh my goodness. I would say actually pretty similarly to, along the lines to what I just shared, like focus on what you're good at. And to me, like also as a female bodied person, like I was very taught that I wasn't right. Like I was never something enough, not, XYZ enough and whatever. And I think to sort of push back and go, hey, I have gifts. I'm extremely creative. I'm highly emotionally intelligent. I'm, intuitive, and whatever, and visionary. And I see new ways of doing things that don't exist yet. It's like, great, like validate that, and hold that in your heart, because that is magic. Like that's the gold in a way, the things that you're good at. So don't, obviously be realistic about the things that you're not good at. Like, don't tell yourself stories about them of going, actually, Madeline, you're really great at finance. It's like, actually, Madeline, you are not great at finance. And that's why your business partner needs to be a chartered accountant, and that's fine. And so be realistic, but really celebrate and go deep on the things that you're awesome at, because we're not encouraged to do that. We're encouraged to fix what is imperfect. And I'd say forget what's imperfect and go hard on the things that, you are uniquely amazing at.
Yes, thank you for bringing up that magic. I love that reminder. So let's transition from speaking about that magic to going into some material talk here. Let's talk about money.
Okay, let's talk about money.
So this next question reads, what are the different ways to get your startup business funded?
Yeah, okay, great question. I just realized I'm not plugged in here to get a little bit of juice in my computer. Okay, so I would actually question the notion to begin with that you actually necessarily need to raise money. Again, we're still talking about the Dragon's Den Shark Tank world that sort of is like, I need to raise money for my, whatever app or whatever product service. And it's like, yeah, okay, if your organization needs to do that, it needs to do that, but don't assume that it does. And definitely don't assume that it does prior to startup. Okay, like, okay, if you're going to build a sophisticated piece of medical equipment, yes, you will need to raise money to do that for sure. And you're not already a multimillionaire. Okay, fair enough, cool. But most ventures, again, don't go that way. Like most of them are what's called bootstrapped, which means that they're self-funded by the founders, love money, friends, family, that type of thing. Like overwhelmingly, that is where startup money comes from. And it's not necessarily a good thing. Like I know it grabs the headlines that, so-and-so raised, 50, 100, whatever, millions of dollars, venture capital, la, la, la. And it's like, that's not actually true for most businesses. And I think can lead to compromising vision. It can lead to potentially, that can also be a really good thing. But I think when people, again, it's this construct of how is this going to go? So there are loans available, there are grants available. Like if you are part of, identify as an equity seeking person, there are certainly funds available. There's mainstream loans, grants, community-based, like there's umpteen types of things available. And if they're not, well, guess what? You get to be creative because you are an entrepreneur. And that's part of the deal. Like there's nothing more satisfying and exciting than kind of bootstrapping it, honestly, because if you're able to, like, I still remember making the first few samples, the first products I made, the Lunapads and Lunapads period underwear, and selling them and making them on my sewing machine in my parents' basement, going out and getting some money and going back and buying more fabric. And it's just this very, very simple act of commerce. And whether that's landing your first coaching client or that's making a product or whatever it is, it's like, just honestly start small and learn from it. Like your idea does not necessarily need to be the biggest, blow it up kind of thing. And I would also encourage people, again, to visit my website. There are resources around funding for people who want to learn more about that. And but definitely have have your story down, right? Because whether you're going, whoever you're talking to around money, there's a piece of advice that I have found to be true that's very common. That is, if you're looking for money, ask for advice. And if you're looking for advice, ask for money. And so you just go in there with that in mind. So never just come out of the gate going, I need $100,000 tomorrow, or whatever. That's not helpful. Another helpful piece of advice is that if you are going into a for-profit business kind of situation, you will need to raise capital or otherwise acquire money in some way, shape, or form. So whether that's just asking for a bigger limit on your credit card, or whether that's just being aware of what your options are before you actually need them. So just doing a bunch of research on your own, what's available in your area based on who you are and what you're doing, and having that in your back pocket before you get to the cash flow crunch or the whatever drama is, because you don't want to be looking for money when you really, really, really need it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I love that you have this perspective of it being empowering to as far as your vision is concerned, to have control of that, and at least to have the control to be flexible however you want with that, but not to just to be aware that you don't have to sell out essentially just to make a quick buck like all the Hollywood movies show us. You can actually maybe do something a little alternative. And actually look at what happened to Bob Ross and to Prince. You have these companies that start to own, and Britney Spears, they own your name. And because you have become, from your soul, you are sharing your art, you're sharing your work, and this industry wants to have that for itself. And Prince had to change his name. He couldn't go out. He was the artist formerly known as Prince. And look at what they're doing with Bob Ross these days. If anyone hasn't seen the documentary, please watch it. It's like he's the sweetest person, and look at what corrupt capitalism did. I digress. So I love that you're encouraging people to be empowered by their vision, and not to expect that this one kind of person or one kind of entity needs to give me the money to support this vision, because maybe it gets a little diluted. And speaking of ideas, we've got about 7 minutes left. So hopefully we can get to at least one or two more questions here. But if not, I think this is a good, an interesting question to follow up with. I have what I believe to be an original idea for a business. Is it irrational for me to feel apprehensive about telling others about my idea in fear that someone may try to copy it or one-up me? If so, how do I gauge who I can trust while I build the business?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, we are fully socialized around kind of a fear-based mentality in so many ways, right? And this is a huge one. It's like, okay, what if I've got this wonderful idea that I love, and what if I tell someone and they steal the idea, and then I'm kind of hooped? Okay, I guess I would start by saying that most people are usually kind of doing their own thing. Like they're, hey, I want to record podcasts, or I want to make art, or I want to, like they're kind of on their own mission. And that they're not, the idea that they're people just kind of looking to glom onto something that has been created by someone else and kind of steal that idea, to me it's largely false. That said, competition is real. But competition happens when you're not the only person doing something like this, and it's because it is a good idea and it happens across multiple fields. Most ideas are not truly original. Like when I started making reusable menstrual products in the early 1990s, almost nobody was doing it, almost nobody. And yet it's a super old idea. Like it's as old as menstruation, right? And now you've got this market's exploded, and I could look at that and I go, oh, I could be like, they stole my idea, but it was never my idea. And it was just an idea that I got interested in before a lot of other people did. And to be honest, what's wonderful about it is that I could never have supplied the millions of menstruating people now using reusable products. Like it would have been impossible for me to do that. So let's go back to the basics of the question. How do you know? You're gonna have to talk to people about your idea. And as we've heard already, it's one of the number one things that I advocate. Trust is essential. It just really is. You've got to, you're kind of rolling the dice. You're putting yourself out there. And it may not be that somebody steals your idea. Maybe somebody laughs at you. How many people do you think laughed at me in the early 1990s for trying to sell washable menstrual pads and period underwear? People were like, that's disgusting. Nobody's ever going to do that. That is so gross. I heard that again and again and again. And it was quite wounding. But I didn't care, because I knew for me and for a certain kind of segment of people, it was actually a great idea. and that I just needed to, you know, I had brick walls every single day doing that. And I kept going, and it attracted people who genuinely cared and genuinely wanted to help. It attracted my business partner. It attracted like hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. What I want to say is the reward outweighs the risk. And I don't want to be dismissive of the risk, because that's real. And then how do you know? That's where you want to cultivate things like emotional intelligence and intuition, and notice the types of questions that people ask you. Notice, like, just notice, see how it feels in your body. Like, this is not about, you know, should they sign an NDA or blah, blah, blah. Like, to me, it's almost a very somatic, visceral experience when you trust someone. And also the idea, people can help make your ideas better. Because if you shut out, if you go, no, I'm not gonna talk to people because they might take my idea, which is already perfect. Here's my idea that's perfect, right? What if you talk to a bunch of people and they're like, oh, that's a great idea, but I wonder if it, like, about this, and you're like, oh yeah. And then the idea is so much better, and then we can do more, and then this and this and this. So it's like, that's the power to me of sharing and inviting other people into the vision, is that not only does it improve the vision, but it helps you achieve it, because they want to help you, because they're invested emotionally, because of it's awesome. So yeah, that's kind of a long answer, but it was a bit of a long question, and it's a complicated question, but I hope that whoever had the courage to ask that has drawn some value from that answer.
Oh, so beautiful, that response. And actually, just to reiterate, I think that the root of that question really, that I think a lot of us are struggling with, is trust issues. You know, how do we trust ourselves when we have been raised in a system that teaches us to think twice about what our intuition says, and, you know, maybe it's safer to go this way instead of starting my own business because X, Y, and Z. I'm definitely going to rewatch this. I recommend folks rewatch this, take notes, open up, the websites that Madeline has dropped in this past hour. So much knowledge, so much encouragement. Thank you so much for sharing time with us. Can you leave us with some food for thought, and then just remind us how we can connect with you when we finish the conversation?
Absolutely, yeah. So my website, and maybe someone can type it in the chat, is madelineshaw.ca, because I'm in Canada, and that's MADELEINE SHAW.ca. Start small, just one thing. Have a conversation with one person. Share one thing about your vision with someone that you've never shared, and see what happens. And yeah, it's not a big, bold move. It's not, or if you're more introverted, cool, write it down. Write it down. And if you don't feel like writing, take 10 minutes, drop into a brief meditation, and go and see what your inner 8-year-old has to share with you. All of these are ideas. They cost you nothing. They take minutes, and you will get some form of insight in terms of what to do next. I guarantee it.
Yes, what a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation. Thank you again so much. Thank you everyone who's joined us live. And if you're rewatching this, we appreciate you taking the time as well to learn with us and unlearn as well with us. Madeline, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to staying in touch. And everyone, we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn. Take care.
Thank you.